Hello everyone and welcome to Avantika Designeering series or ADS as we like to call it. Every week on Wednesday, we feature design and technology leaders who share their professional journey, their thoughts on their domain of work, and designeering where the world of design and engineering meet. Make sure you follow us on social media Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And with that, let's continue with your show.
In recent years, the user centered design has become a widespread, well beyond the design field. Companies and organizations ranging from NASA to IKEA and everything in between have benefited from adopting user centered design. It is not one of those design trends that will come and go in the blink of an eye. In fact, as the internet and software technology becomes even more essential parts of our lives, a user experience centered on the end user becomes an increasingly critical aspect of product and service design. In this episode, we interact with Gaurav Mathur, Vice President of User Experience Design at Myntra. His work has also been published in prestigious journals and conferences like CHI and Design Issues. Not just that, he has also spoken at various conferences, including NASSCOM Design for India's Design Summit, India Digital Summit, and Product Leaders Forum. And that's why, on our journey of discovering designeering, we talked to him about the crux of user centered design. Hello, Gaurav. Welcome to Avantika Designeering podcast show. It's a pleasure to host you on our show today.
Thank you, Rohit, for inviting me to the ADS podcast. Delighted to be here.
Super. So, as an icebreaker, Gaurav, while going through your website, we came across your recent reads where we found that you've read Start with Why by Simon Sinek. The question that I have for you is how do you define your why and what are some of the valuable learning that you have mastered over a period of time?
Well, Rohit, you've asked an existential question. Why do I exist? For our audience, let me briefly summarize what Simon Sinek suggests in this book. Start with why, and then let me try and articulate my why. Simon Sinek basically describes this golden circle, which starts with the why at the center and then goes on to how and what people and organizations generally focus on, and the importance of articulating your why before you describe your how and what. And a lot of organizations know what they do, they know how they do it. However, very few of them are really able to articulate why they do it, and what's their cause, what's their belief, why do they really exist. And the book kind of highlights why it's important to highlight and talk about your why, and why people connect with that more than what they connect with the how and what. My why, well, I think these days I tend to articulate my why as it's to bring delightful experiences that enable people to get some work done easily. And uh, Well, through my work, I want to ensure that people must enjoy their work, right? And it should seem as effortless as possible to them. I look at this in really two perspectives. One as a product designer, and the other as a leader. So if I wear the product designer hat, then it's to enable the users of the products that I'm creating to achieve their goal, get their work done easily, to get a product to get the product and the interface really out of their way, so that they can focus on their task, right, and delight them in their journey, nudge them to the next logical steps, so that they can achieve their goals. And similarly, as a leader, I think managing teams, it's a very similar kind of a vibe. It's broadly how it transforms into enabling the team members to do the best work that they are capable of and to achieve their potential. In some cases, it's to empower them, to coach them, to mentor them, and in some cases, it's also to get out of their way so that they can just focus on the work and create fantastic experiences.
Wow, Gaurav, what's interesting about your views is not only you've defined a why for yourself from a customer, for from a customer's perspective, which all of us want to do, but even for your team and from their perspective, which is very rare to find. And I personally believe that it's all about good quality of people around you, and it's amazing to hear your views that in your why the team is an integral part of it. So that's very heartening to know.
Yeah, team is very critical, I think. Nothing is created as an individual these days. It's a collaborative effort. It's a group effort, and I think the designers, the team plays a very, very critical role.
Absolutely. And moving from, your start with the why, let's move on to your journey. So, from architecture to masters in design and visual communication to you actually being a user experience leader, you've had a journey of multiple different dimensions. My question is, can you take us through your entire professional journey and how have you landed up being where you are?
Well, I'll start with architecture, and I think architecture really provided me with a very sound design foundation and exposed me to various facets of design, all the way from graphic design, spatial design, designing spaces, visualizing in 3 dimensions, to industrial design, to communication design. And during my last few years of architecture education, I had started focusing on and exploring some digital tools. So internet was still very young in India in 99, 2000. And I was really fascinated with what all could be achieved with this new technology. I had started creating these, small messaging boards or forums, as they were called at that time, and one of them was for my batch to interact with and share photos. Um, I was also exploring photography. I had, in fact, taken it as an elective during architecture, and also heard about masters in design at the IITs, and decided to write an entrance exam. Um, I was fortunate to, get through that. In fact, at one point, I was contemplating if I should study urban design, a master's in architecture, or a master's in design. But I think when I read more about the visual communication program, I had kind of decided on what I want to pursue. Uh, the visual communication program kind of it seemed like a combination of everything that I really enjoyed doing. And at that time, interaction design was not a separate course by itself, but it used to be an elective in the visual communication program. And that's what I focused on heavily during my time at IDC. I also pursued typography, book design, communication design in general, and uh, worked on a, worked on some very, very interesting projects in the space of HCI and spatial design. Um, uh, right out of IDC, I worked with a company called Media Lab Asia. This organization was actually set up in collaboration with the MIT Media Labs, and their goal was to take technology to the masses in India. We worked on some very interesting projects. This was pre-smartphone era. This was 2002, 2004, and we were looking at how do we take technology to the rural parts of India. How could we enable farmers to, for example, better understand prices of their produce in nearby markets? And how can they make more informed decisions about where to go and sell their produce? We also worked on some Indic keyboards, try to understand how else could technology play a key role in uplifting the lifestyle of Indians across the country. Um, uh, After Media Lab Asia, I also worked with a company called Island FS, and they had a division called Education Technology Services that used to focus on tools and products for group learning needs. So these were tools that a teacher could use in a classroom to teach a large set of students. And we focused on building some of these tools so that the teachers could be empowered. They could bring rich content into the classrooms, and in a lot of ways improve what they are already doing in the classroom. We focused on tools that could enable teachers to create this content, to kind of stitch a lot of content together, for a class that they were planning to teach. I then ended up forming a small company called Trivio Innovations, and we continued to work on some of the educational products while also doing some design services. We ended up starting a small office in Singapore that I led for a while. And then I joined a company called Citrix in Bangalore. Citrix used to have a SaaS division that used to work on products like GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, GoToMyPC. These were tools that enabled people to work from anywhere and enable people to collaborate. Um, uh, Citrix was in a very interesting stage at that time where they were taking a lot of these products to mobile devices. And I was able to learn a lot about designing for mobile and actually build some products there. And then joined Myntra. Have been leading the design team at Myntra, and I'm sure a lot of our audience would have used Myntra at some point or the other, at least browsed on Myntra, if not bought. So Myntra is the destination for fashion and lifestyle products, and we cater to a lot of diverse audiences and enable them to make fashion and lifestyle purchases very easily. So that's been my journey. Have been a designer all my life, and more recently have been leading teams.
Interesting. So, one question that I have, Gaurav, in this entire rich experience, did you start with the why, or did it just kept happening and now is the time for you to reflect back on the why?
Well, I think you know ha- creating has been a passion, and I think from that perspective, solving problems for others was always a why from the beginning. However, I did not, I think, articulate it in this ways uh, earlier in my career, and there is always some point of reflection that happens as you grow and as you work more. So I don't think I would have phrased this the same way 10 years ago.
Absolutely. In fact, Gaurav, my next question is about something that you spoke about at an event. You shared a talk on 5 metrics to measure design. Can you tell us something more about it?
So this talk was actually very specific to measuring design for digital products. And I'm sure as students of design, a lot of us have pondered over this question: can design be truly measured? Right? Because a lot of design work is very subjective in nature. And what could be some of the parameters to measure design in quantitative terms? That was essentially the focus of the talk. And I think there is a lot of subjectivity in the design craft itself. There are Design has a very visceral quality. There are visual aspects. You see something, and it tends to evoke a certain kind of a feeling, right? Sometimes there is an emotional connect, which is very hard to measure. um, and on the other hand, there is also the problem solving aspect of design. There is objectivity in design. um, you solve certain business problems, you solve certain problems for users in a very effective manner. And that's not really art, right? And I think that's the part that can actually be measured on how well a problem has been solved. So compared to some forms of design, I think digital product design makes it quite easy to measure some of these aspects of the experience. Um, for example, in architecture, uh, there are certain aspects that are fairly easy to measure as well. For example, there is the area utilization, right? There is circulation space versus usable space, energy consumption of a building. There are sustainability aspects. Uh, there is like parking. How many cars can a building accommodate? Those are very measurable aspects. While there are certain other aspects, for example, the aesthetics of the building, the form of the building, the spatial quality of the building, which are very hard to measure. You can get some feedback from the occupants, visitors, users of the building, but the architect will actually have to wait for a significant amount of time to get that, right? Till the whole project is complete, till it has been actually uh, since the use of the building kind of starts to get that kind of feedback. And it's also very hard to make changes because it's a very expensive proposition to change a building in a significant way, right? Whereas user-centered design is all about solving problems for the users and solving for business needs, keeping the user at the center. And digital products are very malleable. You can change them very quickly as compared to some of the other products. So we want to find more value in our products, right? We all want as creators of the products, our products should be used more. We all want to build habit-forming products. And so data-informed UX design becomes very critical. And data comes in many formats. There is qualitative data that a lot of designers are very familiar with. They run research, user research, and generate this kind of qualitative data. And then there is also quantitative data. Um, so another question that a lot of people ask is, why measure? What's the use of measuring design? And I think measuring one acts as a benchmark, so we can decide um, where we want to go from here now, and we also want to measure so that we can improve our experience throughout the journey. Uh, so by creating certain hypotheses and testing them, we can actually say that did it actually improve the experience? Or did it actually move the business in the forward direction? Did it actually help solve some of our customer problems? And that's what the talk kind of focused on. Um, these five uh, broad buckets that I would classify measuring design into are one is loyalty and satisfaction, and these tend to be very self-reported metrics. So these are things that we actually ask our users. And Net Promoter Score or NPS is a very common such metric where people actually indicate how likely are they to recommend this product or a service to their friends and colleagues. Right? Uh, it's a reflection on the loyalty of the product and on the customer satisfaction. Similarly, there are customer satisfaction scores. There are App Store and Play Store ratings that anyone can go and check. And these all reflect how the user perceives the product to be in terms of the loyalty and the satisfaction they get out of using the product. So that's the first one. Then there are usability metrics. These are metrics that generally emerge out of usability studies. So, for example, what's the task completion rate for a specific part of the product? Uh, what's the task completion time for this activity? What's the system usability score? Right? And there are many more. So that's another bucket. Then there are broad user metrics. So these are indications of how many users are actually using the product. How many users are we able to retain on our product? How many users actually churn out, which means that they stop using the product after a while? What's our user growth like? Right. So these are again very indicative metrics on how's the user base for a product growing or declining. Then there are behavioral metrics. These are metrics that you get out of the product, right? So these come from um, uh, a lot of instrumentation that happens on the product, and they indicate what's the usage frequency uh, for our customer base. How often do they come back to the platform? How engaged are they? Um, then there are adoption metrics that tell us how easily is a new feature in the product adopted by the users. What's the repeat usage like? What kind of paths do users take in your product? Generally a lot of products are very complex, and there are different users who take different kinds of journeys on the product. So, for example, you could start by searching, you could browse, um, etc. So that's another set. And then the last set is actually conversion metrics. This indicates how do users actually progress in their journey? Where do they drop off? Um, and again, this is very telling of some of the usability issues that might exist in the product that need to be resolved, or technical issues that could exist in a product that prevent the user from actually going to their next steps. Uh, so these are again, clickstream data, conversion data. A lot of products track conversion funnels. They look at how many people are able to progress to the next steps, how many people decline or drop off from that phase. And if you track these, then you're able to focus on very specific aspects and improve them. So those are the five broad buckets, at least the way in which uh, I see product matrix or design matrix that designers could use effectively and improve their products.
Hey, did you know Myntra launched its first digital reality show, Myntra Fashion Superstar, on Myntra app on September 2019? It's world's first hunt for social media fashion influencers in a unique digital reality show format. The show is in association with Zoom Studios and will identify and reward India's next big fashion influencer. I think what I found very interesting about these matrix is that they are they're blurring the lines with the marketing matrix. I mean, these were some of the matrix that you would conventionally talk about marketing team leading it, to now it actually getting into the domain of you know of designers, and that's very interesting.
Yeah, so actually there are, I would say that they're both marketing and product metrics. So for example, marketing teams generally focus on how many new users are they able to bring to the platform and through which channels. They also focus on how many users are we able to retain, and how do we, if people churn, how do we bring them back again to the platform. So those are the metrics that generally the marketing teams kind of focus on, to a large extent, even engagement metrics. And then there are a lot of product metrics. For example, product funnels are very product centric metrics, where product managers and designers want to constantly evaluate how the product is functioning. How can we improve the journey of our users throughout uh, uh, the entire product, right? Right from the time when they come onto the platform to the time when they start engaging with it, start using a specific number of features. How do we nudge them to use more features? How do we nudge them to get their tasks completed very efficiently? So it's a combination of a lot of metrics, and usability metrics tend to be very design specific metrics, design and research specific metrics. So yes, it's a combination of a lot of metrics.
Absolutely. In fact, my next question is about your work at Myntra. And, I would like to start with a quote that people ignore design that ignores people. A famous quote by Frank Chimero. And this quote perfectly summarizes the importance of user centered design. UCD, as it is called in the short form, is about gaining deep understanding of who will be using the product. The question that I have for you, Gaurav, is how do you ensure user centered design is applied at Myntra, and what has been its impact to date?
Sure. So I think today it's very hard to imagine a user experience design process that's not user centered or goal centered for that matter, right? And I think understanding our users, their behaviors, their motivations is extremely critical to the entire design process. And of course, we follow it at Mintra. Um, so we regularly conduct user research in various formats. We connect with our users. We try and understand from our users what their pain points are, and what could be some of the unsaid problems that we might uncover in this process, where we could then apply design thinking and product innovation to solve for some of these issues. Um, we also work on a lot of internal products. So, for example, there are a number of products that get used in the warehouses, that get used in the entire logistics process. Um, Also, certain products that we use for to interact with our brands and partners. And here again, the audience is very different. It's not our users who come onto Myntra to buy products, but people who are trying to get things done in a very efficient manner. And once again, we really connect with them, try to understand deeply what their problems are, what is it that's a hindrance in their workflow today, and how could we use that as designers. So I think the key impact I would say is in terms of developing empathy for our users to not just shape the products but also build and develop this empathy for the entire organization and for the set of stakeholders that are very involved in this product development process. And these are product managers, engineers, so that all of us together can focus on these problems and solve for user needs. It's very important for everyone involved in this process uh, to have a very clear view of the problems and to be able to focus on them. So I think that's what user-centered design kind of enables. One part of it is what actually goes into the product building process, and the other part is building this empathy across the organization.
Interesting. In fact, Gaurav, today companies are asking user experience professional to use design and research at different phases of the development process and answer different type of questions. In fact, given these increased demands, simply responding with test it in the usability lab is no longer enough. The question that I have for you, Gaurav, as a user experience leader, is how to pick the best user experience research method for each stage in the development process?
Sure. Well, I'm not a expert researcher, but I'll give you my perspective more as a design generalist. And I feel that design and research go hand in hand, and they need to be seen in the context of the overall product shaping process. Um, and as a lot of our audiences will can relate to, a product goes through various stages in its life cycle. Um, so, for example, if you're in this stage of identifying a problem space, what should we uh, uh, try and tackle? What areas should we try and tackle? Where should our product really fit in? That's like an early stage for a company, right? And there are very different kind of research methodologies that help solve for this. Um, versus when you are in a very growing and scaling product stage. And there are different set of research skills that come into play there. So for example, so I think the question to really ask at each phase is what insights will help me at this stage of product creation, and how do I get there? Right? How do I get those insights? And I think for example, if you've identified a problem that a number of users have, and you want to get a better understanding of that problem space, how do you understand how users are trying to work around that problem today? What kind of solutions are they adopting today? How how could a better solution make their lives better? Right? Um, how deep is their pain? Is it a minor annoyance, or does it require them to invest a lot of time and energy and money to work around it? And in such cases, a lot of formative, generative research methodologies are helpful. You want to be in the user's environment. You want to conduct a lot of contextual inquiries. You want to see how they work today. Um, if are they trying to collaborate? How are they trying to collaborate? What goes into that collaboration? Are they trying to just perform one activity on their own, but the tools are not good enough? And where those challenges exist, what kind of information would they seek from a product that would help improve their lives? And then once you have a concept or an idea, you want to validate it quickly, right? A lot of companies call it the product market fit. You want to make sure that you have the right product that fits a gap. Um, and there again, there are different kinds of research methodologies that are very helpful. You would want to use some of the evaluation research methodologies. Um, so do you end up building the entire product before you actually get any user feedback, or do you start early with some mocks and prototypes that you can put in front of users and start getting their feedback? Right? A lot of guerrilla testings are very helpful here. You want to get some quick feedback. You want to use that feedback in the design process so that you can iterate on your designs. You can constantly improve them. And once you have a complete solution, how do you identify if it's easy to use, easy to learn? And their usability studies are very helpful. So, uh, for example, how would you track a product usage across multiple days? Right? There are many products where the work happens over a long period of time. And what kind of research methodologies could help here? Right? There are, for example, diary studies that a lot of organizations conduct. Um, and I think I think the selection of a research methodology really depends on what are the questions that you want to get answered. So I highly recommend a book called Just Enough Research by Erica Hall, and it's a great book to learn about various research methodologies and what amount of research is just right to get you these insights and to move quickly to the next process. See, research at the end of the day is not the goal by itself. Everyone wants to create a product.
Absolutely. And in fact, while you were speaking about these tools, one of the interesting thoughts that I had is developing human computer interactions involves design on both sides of that interaction itself. And if you look at it from the technology side, the designer must have a thorough understanding of the available hardware and software components. And if you were to look at it from the human side, the designer must have a good understanding of how humans learn and work with computers itself. In fact, that also leads to my next question, Gaurav, is how can designers create effective and efficient interactions, balancing both these factors of the human computer interaction side?
Yeah, yeah. So I think the domain of human-computer interaction is very interesting because it actually sits at the intersection of human psychology, design, and design in its broad sense. So it would incorporate communication design, visual design, industrial design, and technology. So you need to kind of master all these areas. You need to understand human psychology, design, and technology to create really good products. Um, and I feel that successful products are really created when founders or designers, for that matter, have been able to identify a problem, propose a solution, and have actually built it using technology. So you need to be smart about how much research do you need, how much design do you need, and how much engineering effort do you need to create a minimum viable product or an MVP that you can actually ship and test with users. So I think the designers of today and tomorrow, I think, need to master a lot of skills in all these domains. Understand human psychology deeply, use research methodologies to uncover pain points, um, be a master of design skills and the design craft, and also understand technology to a large extent, and to use technology effectively in creating products.
Interesting. And when you touched upon the technology bit of it, and you'd also mentioned this earlier, in fact, user experience is inherently a multidisciplinary field, is what I feel, and it requires a strong ability to collaborate. The question that I have is how is this work being integrated with fields like data science, statistics, and communication? Some of these you touched upon in your previous answers as well.
Great question, Rohit. I think design has the power to drive innovation, and the act or process of design really focuses on conceiving what doesn't exist yet, right? And designers are always engrossed in this whole activity of how do we create, how do we propose the solution that others are not able to see. And in this process, I think designers also interpret user needs and wants, as well as a lot of other data around product usage, user demographics, etc., to shape an experience, right? To shape a tangible solution. And I think there are a number of kind of informed leaps of faith that designers make in this process. There is a lot of intuition goes on, intuitive decision making that goes on in this journey, and this implies that um, the whole design process is inherently risky, right? And I think while designers can minimize the risk, um, minimize making inferential errors by adopting a very rigorous design process. Uh, we also must accept the risk that comes along with it, which means that new products may fail. Uh, you may have done a lot of your work, but when you put it in the market and they get used at scale, there is a likelihood that they could fail. I think learning about how innovation takes place, when do seemingly innovative products fail in the market, when do they succeed, what all goes into making a product or a service successful. um, right, as designers we generally tend to focus a lot on just the design aspects of it, but there is a lot more that happens to make a business successful. And I think it's very critical for the future generation of designers to acknowledge that and to learn a lot of these other aspects, learn about innovation, learn about business, uh, to make the experiences successful.
Hey, did you know Mintra has announced the launch of Be Unskippable, a new brand campaign that highlights its role as a fashion expert for its customers. The positioning pivots on Mintra being the facilitator for people to make an impression with fashion. Beautiful. In fact, my next question is towards that. But before I move on to that, Gaurav, any example of an organization that you know of that is using it in a superb way? Mind it, uh, we wouldn't want you to take example of Mintra, but is there any other organization where you've come across which is using this blend of design, technology, business in a very interesting way?
Well, I think a lot of successful organizations do this well. They've kind of mastered this process of uh, of creating new products. As designers, we often cite Apple as a great example of this. They've done this many times. They've also failed at some of these, which is the point that I was driving earlier, that you might bet big on something, but then you really see the effects only when you put it in the market. And I think a lot of interesting tech companies are doing this today. They're experimenting very quickly. They're trying to learn from their users and uh, and then make small changes. And a lot of times these small changes just go unnoticed by users. So, for example, um, if I ask you, what were the major changes that Facebook did in the last like couple of years? Very few people are able to cite really strong examples. It's not that they're not innovating, right? They are doing a lot of things almost on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Facebook stories
Yeah,
and
yeah,
now integrating it with Instagram itself. So you could post both on Instagram as well as Facebook at the same time. You don't
yeah.
have to go to two different platforms and post.
And similarly, a lot of companies keep making such changes, such improvements to their products, using a lot of data, uh, doing it in an iterative manner, uh, running experiments with a small set of customers, figuring out what works, what doesn't work, throwing away things that don't work, and taking things that work and improving them further. So that's the process, and I think I would say that all successful tech companies today um, are utilizing this to some extent or the other, and I think Mintra is no different as that.
Absolutely. And that brings us, Gaurav, to our last question. At Avantika University, we designed this term called as, we coined this term, I would say, called as designeering, which is the base ideology that we follow. Now, my question to you is, how's this blend of all design plus technology helping you to create a different experience for your users? And is this relevant?
Sure. Well, I think uh, first of all, I think it's a very interesting term that you've coined, designeering. I also feel that there should be a business m- uh, angle to this mix. You should mix business as well somehow into the term. And I think. it's critical to have business and tech insights besides design to create a great product. So, we work very closely with both product and business and tech teams. And I think the need of the hour is to create T-shaped professionals, right? So you have depth of domain understanding, which in this case would be design or engineering, but you also have a lot of breadth of skills so that you can collaborate very effectively with experts from these different domains, right? So you could collaborate with a business person, you could collaborate with a if you're a designer with an engineer, if you're an engineer with a designer, or a product person, uh, and we don't know in future there may be more domains that could emerge. But I think what will be critical uh, is to be able to shape people in this manner, and shape yourself in this manner so that you continue to have expertise of a specific domain, but you also have the breadth available to work with others.
Wow, thank you so much, Gaurav. This was really insightful, very exciting, and I'm sure our listeners are going to have a lot of takeaway from this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on the show and doing this for us.
It was a pleasure talking with you, Rohit. Thank you, Rohit, and thank you to the entire Avantika team for inviting me to the podcast. Best wishes for all your work.
Thank you, Gaurav.
Hey there, we hope you enjoyed our show. Do write to us on ads@avantika.edu.in. We look forward to your opinions, feedbacks, and suggestions of speakers you would like us to host on this show. Do tune in our channel next week on Wednesday for a new story on Hubhopper or wherever you get your podcast from. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter.